Hey there, how you doing? We're in the middle of Scorpio season now. It's my favourite time of the year, I have to say. And yeah, we've got an interesting pattern coming up. And if you know this channel really well, you'll know that one of the things I just can't resist, and that's a good astrological pattern. And we've got one coming up with Uranus and Mercury. And if you know your birth chart, and your Uranus and Mercury are in an aspect to each other, this is going to be doubly important for you because you already have a predisposition for Mercury and Uranus working together in your birth chart. So what's this pattern? This pattern is the Mercury opposition to Uranus. Now, ordinarily, it would be done and dusted within a few days. So, Mercury would be coming into this opposition, you might say 5 days just before the exact moment of the opposition, and maybe 5 days as he's clearing. And then we're really, really out of that opposition. But we've got this opposition playing out. It's already started, but it's going to be made exactly 3 times in the next 1 month and 11 days. So it's going to be between the 29th of October and the 10th of December when it's really exact. And then it's still going to take a few days, another 8 days after this last exact conjunction for it to completely fizzle out altogether. So we've got Uranus and Mercury working together over, a month and a half. And they're working in opposition, which makes it more striking, a lot more risky, a lot less predictable. The one thing we can predict is that it's going to be unpredictable. And so, yeah, all themes to do with Mercury and Uranus are going to be really extreme because they're pulled apart. And it's going across a couple of different signs. So currently, at the start of this, this opposition is going from Gemini and Sagittarius in the opposition. But during the opposition, because both of these planets are retrograde, they're both going to retrograde into the previous sign. So it starts off Gemini, Sagittarius, it ends Taurus and Scorpio. So this is quite an interesting little moment in time. Now, it's got 3 exact conjunctions, and in the middle one, which is on the 19th of November, it's right before Mercury is in a cazimi, and also the day before the new moon. So there's some extra heightened bits going on there as well. So what I'm going to do in this forecast is pace out what I think are the overall patterns to do with Mercury and Uranus and why it might be important to pay attention, especially if you've got them in an aspect in your birth chart. How you can use this energy, that's the thing that I'm most interested in, is how can you use this to your best advantage? And then at the end of this presentation, I'll be talking a little bit on a sign-by-sign basis. And when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at it from the perspective of your ascendant sign. So I'll be doing ascendant sign forecast right at the end. So yeah, buckle up, because I think this is going to take us into... it's going to take us into the unknown, and I think it could get really, really exciting. So if you're new to this channel, by the way, my name's Louisa Tanner-Munson. Welcome to Feel Good Astrology. Hope you find it helpful. Let's bring up my slides, because I can't do anything without my slides. It has to keep me prompted as to what's going on. So anyway, these are the 3 dates, and you can see the first exact opposition is at 0 degrees 21. Mercury's in Sagittarius, and Uranus, which is already retrograde, is in Gemini, just. So that's the first one. The next date will be on the 19th of November, when they've both, by this point, retrograded into their previous signs. And then the last one, by this point, Mercury is going direct again. The last one on the 10th of December, they're both at 28 degrees in the signs of Scorpio and Taurus. And then they really are going their separate ways, because Uranus is backing deeper into the sign of Taurus, and Mercury is moving on out of Scorpio. So they really are coming out of that opposition. Now, this, like I said, this is a prolonged opposition because both of these planets are going retrograde. in the middle of it, so it's keeping it longer. You'll see here I've put in the glyphs. This is the symbol for Mercury. This is the symbol for Uranus, just in case you don't know. And this one here is representing the opposition, because they're appearing at different sides of the zodiac. Now, one of the things, Mercury is known as a bringer of information and communication. He's the god of moving things around. He's the fastest planet that we consider in astrology, because obviously the sun and the moon aren't actually planets. But Mercury is our fastest. He moves really fast around the zodiac, and he does one lap a year, more or less. He has 3 retrogrades a year, so there are times when we're intuitive in our feeling as opposed to rational. Mercury is really bringing up, I think, rational thought mostly. Now, he's a deliverer of information, because he's moving from place to place. I think of him as a cosmic, like postal worker, like making deliveries, taking a parcel from here to there. That's like information. And he's also known as Hermes, according to whether you're Roman or Greek. Now, he's one of his jobs as a god is to go between the humans and also the gods. And so he's a messenger. And as such, he is bringing us very, very deep messages. And the messages that we're going to receive, whether they're conscious in our actual reality or if they're unconscious via Uranus, they are going to be quite quickly delivered and they're going to be quite shocking, because Uranus is the planet of shocks and surprises, of change. He's eccentric, unpredictable, chaotic. He's definitely a god of chaos. Now, Mercury's like the terrestrial messenger. He's the terrestrial mind guy. This describes the blueprint of how we think and communicate in written and verbal language. And Uranus is like the cosmic. So he's terrestrial, cosmic. He's a higher octave, a higher sort of vibration of Mercury. And Uranus is the god of the sky. And so when you think about, the sky, we have thunderstorms, we have tornadoes, we have wind, we have all sorts of changes. But I always think of Uranus as almost representing the internet, and the idea of the Akashic records, the idea that there's this invisible force of communication, this invisible store of knowledge. I mean, I send an email and it looks very real. It looks like something I've physically created, but actually it's just ones and zeros invisibly sent across the world. So Uranus is very much about almost like the channel of information as it flows to us and through us and via us and around us. And if you see, they both look a little bit like this. They've got satellite dishes. Mercury has a satellite dish on his head, and Uranus looks like a space invader. They do look like satellites. So they are there to pick up information, Uranus in particular. Now, the opposition is where, planets are completely in opposite parts of the zodiac. They're exactly 180 degrees away from each other. And, so this creates tension. They're not working together. They're working in different ways. And their energy is more scattered and more jumpy. I think of it like a seesaw. One of them sends a message and the other goes up in the air, and then he comes down with another message and the other side goes up in the air. It's not kind of a balanced and easy communication. So, first of all, when I apply this to the world rather than just you and I as people, I think, crikey, what's going to happen with worldwide communications around the 29th? But between the 29th and the 10th of December, Uranus is pretty worldwide. And if we think Uranus rules Aquarius, he's one of the rulers of Aquarius, and right now we've got Pluto there, and AI seems to be really taking over a lot of stuff. The AI Uranus kind of energy just seems to be really, really prominent right now. And so the first thing I think about is just its reach, and how in this next month and a half, its reach is likely to go suddenly get really, really huge, surprisingly, shockingly so. We might have some very strong disruptions to information as well, where we're not in charge of, like with AI, you know, I really get the sense that we've been informing AI a lot at the moment, all of us co-creating with AI and making it stronger, making it faster. I know I've been testing it. I've been putting it through its paces. And so we've been informing it, and we can be working with AI as if it's our friend. We might be working with it, you know, to you know, really quite wicked ends. Who knows? I mean, is AI itself a terrible thing, or is it the people that are using it that are terrible, or the people behind it that are programming it that are terrible? Or, you know, can it be, you know, it's a tool. It can be used in a magnificent way, and it could be used in a really scary way. Well, I think we might get some shocks with mass information over this period of time. And during this period of time that this information is spread everywhere. That's my sense. It very much like, you know, if there was a huge storm, and funnily enough right now, and not funnily enough because it's obviously not funny for people who are in a storm right now, but right now I think in Jamaica there's a huge storm, which just looks absolutely formidable. I hope everyone is safe there, really do. So Uranus can really be impacted in world events, I think, and can bring about a lot of shocks and a lot of new information, and this almost download of information as well. So it is very, very awakening. And so seeing them in an opposition is kind of interesting because they are connected. It's not a comfortable connection. An opposition is difficult. It's like when you're having an argument with somebody and, you know, you're facing this person's facing that one, and you're kind of squaring off to each other. You're looking each other straight in the eye, and you know, how do you soften those energies? How do you soften that confrontation between these two energies? So, yeah, it's interesting. So I've put in here, we've got sudden insight, potentially, shocking insight. It's highly stimulating. I think, you know, if you have difficulty sleeping, you might want to consider herbs or different teas or something, meditation or hypnotherapy, something to calm the mind right down, because this is highly stimulating. And if you've got the Uranus and Mercury flavor going on in your chart, it's going to pick up on this in a big way. Also, if you've got planets at the end of Scorpio, or the end of Taurus, or right at the beginning of Sagittarius, or right at the beginning of Gemini, again, those planets or angles are really going to be soaking up all this Uranus and Mercury energy. So, yeah, highly stimulating. Lightning fast information, it could lead to major disruptions. Now, energy, it's, you know, in many respects, energy is a form of communication. You know, like when we've got energy, we're able to move and do stuff, and then, you know, it dies and then nothing moves, you know. So I do think, you know, I really think Uranus has a lot to do with electricity, and like I said, the internet. And so one of the things I'm thinking with this is we might have power outages or disruption to our energy in general. You know, like, are the systems going to blow? Is there going to be too much? Is there going to be something that's kind of dysregulated, like a load of information comes in, we're overwhelmed, it's like we blow a circuit. You know, on a personal level, you might recognize that from when there's been something major that happens in your life and there's so much to take on board that you have to shut down for a minute. Have a cup of tea, or whatever it is you do culturally where you are. I know that's the thing that Brits do, isn't it? They have a cup of tea and a biscuit, you know, to calm down. You know, so you can reboot. So I really get that there's some major disruptions. Energy insights are coming in too fast for comprehension, and this could lead to an awakening. And I've met lots of awakened people and interviewed loads of awakened people, you know, people who've had an awakening to the degree that their concept of the world is so shaken that they never see it again in the same way. And if you've worked with awakened people, or if you are an awakened being, you'll notice or what I've observed, I'll own my own judgments here. What I've observed in people that are awakened and have had their sense of everything shattered is when they're coming round from their awakening period, is that their words sometimes jumble up and their sense of time and space is really altered. And, you know, the way they talk on social media, it just changes. It doesn't always make sense. It's not always grammatically correct. You know, all of a sudden, the usual conventions that we're working with, they've been fried, and it takes a while to get back into our usual balance if we ever do reclaim that. So, you know, I mean, this happens every year. And so you might ask, well, what's so special this year? And I would say there's a whole heap of really special stuff, and I'll show you that in the charts in a minute. But just in case you're born with this opposition between Mercury and Uranus, I mean, this will really relate to you if you're born with this, especially if you're born with this at the end of a sign and the beginning of a new sign. It creates a kind of rebellious energy. So there is a sort of interesting rebelliousness. And it can be quite passive as well, because Uranus, if you think of Uranus and Aquarius, the energy of Aquarius sometimes does seem a little bit passive, does seem a little bit unattached. I've got a son with the moon in Aquarius who seems very unattached, doesn't take things too personally at all. And the Aquarius energy can really do that. So you may well, you know, people with this kind of Uranus opposition to Mercury, they can be difficult to understand because they seem unconventional. They almost seem as if they don't care about the things that you care about because they are detached from things in a personal way. They're often very distinctive in the way that they think and highly unusual. They can be a real genius, but again, it's in a different way to what we might expect. And they're eccentric. And just to prove eccentricity, I've spelt it wrong. I've spelt it in a really eccentric way. So there's some thoughts, and all of these energies are coming up for us right now between the 29th of October right the way through to the 10th of December, and then fading out thereafter. And by the 17th, 18th of December, it's done and dusted. Before I go any further, just want to thank everyone that supports this channel, by the way. I really appreciate you, and sometimes I don't remember to give you a shout out, but I really, you know, my life would be very different without you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me on this journey. So I've got 3 slides here to show you the 3 different charts and what's special about them, because again, I think as we track the charts, you get a better feeling as to how this information is transforming, and so you can start to apply it to your life. So the first one, Mercury has just gone into Sagittarius on the same day that this opposition comes in exactly. And so I always think that when planets change signs, they're a lot stronger than usual. They're a lot headier than usual, and a little bit more chaotic. So Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius is quite philosophical, really into truth, really wants to know the truth. Often realizes that truth can't really exist in the way, you know, a sort of Gemini Mercury would expect the truth to be, well, there's a right and a wrong, and it's obvious. It's either on or it's off. There's no in-betweens. Whereas the Sagittarius Mercury can see the context and applies the context. And so Mercury here is looking for meaning and truth and trust, and is a little bit pioneering. We'll fight for the truth as well. So it's interesting, you know, Uranus here is really showing us these ones and zeros. It's quite binary, and yet Mercury here is really wanting the context. So there's a lot of information. Remember, Gemini and Sagittarius are the 2 teaching signs, or the education signs. You know, Gemini is more associated with early learning, early school, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, where we're learning the narrative of the world. And you know, like the first phase of education, almost like a normalization, you know, we come in and we start to learn all these little subjects, different subjects, lots of bits and pieces, the rights and wrongs, the good and bads, and the ones and the twos and whatnot. And when we get to our higher education, that's more of a Sagittarius energy, where we understand the context behind the subjects, and maybe how all these different subjects link in together and work synergistically. So yeah, there's a lot about meaning here, and there's a lot that might be challenging what we've always known to be true. So our narrative is really being shocked by Uranus, that's really stirring it up and reminding us that maybe everything we've ever learnt about life, I mean, is it even relevant anymore? I mean, I'm not trying to scare you, but if AI does come in and replace a lot of information and does it in seconds to a human hour, we might find that our education is just superfluous, just overnight like that. And so we might need a completely different skill set now. And so, yeah, our minds might be blown just by this. But Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius, I think, is still standing for human thinking, because it has context, it has nuance, and it also has this sense of purpose assigned to it. So, yeah, there's a lot. Now, on this particular day, Mars is also in opposition, not exactly in opposition, and Mars and Mercury are tight. Mars is still in his own sign, in the sign of Scorpio, so he's mega strong. He's got a strong message and he's not afraid to hide it. And of course, Mercury's about to get loud and proud. Mercury and Sagittarius people do like to talk. They do like to rabbit. I've got it. And, you know, they are not keeping things hidden. You know, Mercury's just come out of Scorpio, where, you know, there would have been powerful words going on with Mercury and Mars together. But yeah, he goes into Sagittarius and all of a sudden, you know, everything that's been in the dark is coming out to be seen, and not to be ignored. You know, the Sagittarius energy will send it far and wide. There's also this beautiful grand trine going on, and this grand trine's been going on for ages, and it's been reconstituted. So, yeah, we've got Mars and Mercury making a trine, sometimes with the North Node. The North Node is just out of it now. Saturn and Neptune, and also Jupiter. This is a really magnificent trine. And then when you put in the fact that Uranus is also in this pattern, it becomes a kite, which really gives us this beautiful flow between the water signs. So again, the idea of things flowing, information flowing, and of course, because water, I think water is playing behind the scenes. It's kind of stormy. I don't know if you can hear the rain, by the way. It's peeing it down here in Portugal today. But to me, we're awash with emotions. The psychic energy right now is off the scale. You know, Jupiter in Cancer really opening up us to ancestral information, family intuition. Neptune at the last degree of the zodiac in the sign of Pisces. I mean, Neptune rules Pisces. He's one of the rulers of Pisces. And, you know, the zodiac starts at 0 Aries, goes all the way around. So this is the start of a new story, goes all the way around, gets to the last degree in Pisces, the 29th degree. This is where the story disappears. It dissolves into the ether. It's unknown, it's dying. The story is dying so that it can be reborn again when it, you know, when the planet hits 0 Aries. So it's fascinating. You know, we thought we had the story, then Neptune's gone back into Pisces at 29 degrees. I think we're learning a lot about the stories we've had and how they're now disappearing. Like everything we've known, to me, this is the dissolution of everything we've been certain about. And then, you know, Neptune is also in a trine with Mercury. Interesting little sidestep here. Just before Mercury goes into Sagittarius and into this exact opposition with Uranus, Mercury's in an exact trine with Neptune at 29 degrees, both of them in the water signs. To me, this is an invitation that something is about to shift and change. And so then Mercury goes into Sagittarius, goes into this opposition. And to me, it's like something, it's like the scene is set. It's like ready, get set, go. That's how I see it. You know, it's something like this emotional, psychic scene is set. The trigger is pulled and it's like, go go, go, go. Something is about to change, and it's intense. Now, if we go to the next opposition, by this time, Mercury is actually retrograde. So let me just fill you in. So Mercury is going retrograde, where are my notes? On November the 9th, by which time he's actually got to 6 degrees in the sign of Sagittarius. And so he's heading back into this opposition with Uranus, and he's just gone back into the sign of Scorpio. So he's at 29 degrees in the sign of Scorpio. Do you remember what I just said about 29 degrees? It's like, it's known as the anuretic degree. Read, it's a chaotic degree. So we've got Mercury at a chaotic degree, the last degree in Scorpio, and Uranus at the chaotic degree in the sign of Taurus. You see, in this time, Uranus has also just gone back into Taurus. So they've both ingressed into the previous signs, and now they're in the opposition at the last degree. This is really tense, and it's changing the story that we've heard. So what I get here is that there's a new story forming around the 29th, and then by the 19th of November, we're getting a different kind of feel with it and a new start with this story. And yeah, this is a really strong day because it's the day before the new moon in Scorpio, and it's the day before the Mercury cazimi. So in many respects, Mercury's not very strong. Mercury's under the beams of the sun. He's really close to the sun, and so he's not meant to be able to have much strength. What that also means is the sun is in an opposition to Uranus as well. So at some level, I think this is affecting us at a personal level. You know, the sun represents our ego, our ID, our identity, how we feel about ourselves. So this is very, very strong. And of course, we're right at the end of the moon phase, just before the new moon. So we're really imaginative, really in our own little space. We're really ready for a fresh start. So that's very, very strong. And we've still got this grand trine going on. You'll see now that it's got Venus and the moon connecting with Jupiter and also connecting with the North Node. And the moon is connecting in with Saturn. We've also got the sun and Mercury in a grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune. So this watery grand trine I was speaking about, and the kite, so it's like a watery grand trine and the challenge of the opposition. This is huge energy. It is nuts. It is absolutely nuts. I just can't say it any other way. And like when you look at it, you can see it's all lining up with Pluto too. There's so much going on. And that brings me to the third chart. I'm just going to pause here and I'll carry on. One sec. And so let's have a look at this last Mercury and Uranus opposition. So you can see they're now both at 28 degrees. Mercury's now going direct, so it's no longer retrograde. And from here on in, this exact opposition at 28 degrees 40, Uranus is going back into Taurus, further and further, and Mercury is just going to be moving forwards now, and we'll be going into Sagittarius, not long after. And so they are coming out of this opposition, and from I think around about the 17th of December, they really are out of that sort of 180 degree aspect. Now, this to me, as they come out of this opposition for good, to me this is the new set point of where we're heading. The very next time we have a Mercury opposition to Uranus, i.e. next year in 2026, it will be across Gemini and Sagittarius. That's just how it will be. In fact, all oppositions to Uranus as of next April will be between Gemini and Sagittarius. So the Gemini and Sagittarius energies are going to be really strong because Uranus oppositions are always bringing about a sense of change. And because these are all going to be very strong, we'll find that around late November and up to mid-December, this will be the time when we start to have more confrontations coming up in our lives, and most likely in world events as well. So this is definitely going to be a really strong time for many, many years to come. Anyway, Mercury is going direct again. One of the things I think is really powerful with this is Mercury is in this beautiful grand trine again. It's still in this grand trine, really working beautifully with Jupiter. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because Jupiter is traditionally a sign that rules Sagittarius, and Mercury is a sign that traditionally rules Gemini. And so it's interesting that they're in this lovely trine. To me, as we're coming out of this opposition, there's this promise that we'll be able to work with information, whether it's philosophical or fact-based or rational and intuitive. So I really get the fact that maybe the way we, how we have knowledge is going to be changing. And, the last thing that I really notice about this is on this day when this opposition is just starting to transform and, after this they will separate. We've got this lovely series of trines from the Sun to Venus and Mars in a lovely trine with Chiron. To me, this is an indication that whatever we've been through with this sort of upgrade of information, to me, it just looks like all is well. Mars in a trine to Chiron is we're taking action about our healing. Most likely we're looking after ourselves a lot more competently. The Sun in a trine to Chiron, I think we've come to terms with our identity and what being us means. It's also a time when we start to embody the healer and the coach within ourselves. And also we've got Venus in a trine to Chiron, suggesting that we can really look for and be in healing relationships. So whatever's going on here, whatever's happened during this month and a half, I really feel that, and at the beginning of this month and a half, we had Venus in an opposition to Chiron. In fact, all of these planets had recently been in an opposition to Chiron. At the end of this, as you can see, nothing's in opposition to Chiron. In fact, the Sun, Mars and Venus are all now in a trine. So to me, this is summing up the autumn experience, the experience of these oppositions with Chiron. And this is the very last opposition with Uranus. This is formally ending the opposition season altogether, which I spoke about. If you listen to my autumn forecast, I was talking about it being a series of oppositions and this beautiful grand water trine. So yeah, we're coming. This is drawing us to a close from the 10th of December. Yeah, and I think we're going to be a lot more optimistic. We'd have really been plummeting deep into our knowledge banks and really coming to redefine loyalty and trust. And with Neptune back in the sign of Taurus for his last ingress into Taurus, it's his last movement. He's going to be in Taurus now until April the 26th, 2026. I do think the markets, I do think the money, I do think how we value things is going to change. So yeah, I just think this is a real collective change. And of course, we can look at it personally too. So that brings me to the next thing, which is I'm going to be looking now at a sign-by-sign forecast. It's just going to be, it's not going to take too long to look at each of the signs. Just give you some of my key thoughts about the energy that you're going to be going through during this time of surprise, shock, upgrades, downloads, the sort of tension between the very rational mind and the very intuitive and channeled mind. And so, yeah, I'm going to do those step by step. You'll see that these are all chaptered, so you can just zoom ahead and check it out. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching so far, and see you in your Ascendant forecast very shortly. So if you've got Aries Ascendant, and these are whole sign forecasts, if you notice that when you look at your birth chart, you've got Aries and Taurus in your first house, this section here, then you might also want to listen not just to Aries Ascendant, but also to Taurus Ascendant too. Anyway, if you've got an Aries ascendant, during this time of Mercury and Uranus oppositions, the energy starting across your 3rd and 9th house polarity, and it's ending in your 2nd and 8th house polarity. Now, what does this mean to you? Well, first of all, I think it's really bringing about a shock in terms of what you think you know, what you've always known about your childhood, what you've always known about the environment, the world around you. There's some big challenges to assumed knowledge. And, you know, this is happening at a time when it feels like there's new information coming from far and wide that is creating a shock, creating a little bit of disorientation. You might not know where you belong anymore because, you know, are you meant to be local or far away? It's difficult to know which area to trust, you know, where you're getting your information from. To me, this is really taking us back to the energy that a lot of us felt during COVID, when there was a very strong pull on us to follow local knowledge, and to follow the knowledge of the doctors and the scientists that we were told about. I put bunny ears in, apologies if you are a scientist, but a lot of things that were so-called scientific truth have later been debunked. So, to me, this is like the collective understanding. It's not an attack on science, by the way, or anyone in particular, but our understanding as we had it, as it was given to us, was one way, and this is where this is all being kind of shocked out of us, and the new knowledge of how things are is anything but what we were expecting. Then, Mercury is going to be going back into the sign of Scorpio. What date is that? I didn't write it down, sorry. So he's heading back in, and the next opposition, the exact opposition, is on the 19th. And by that time, it's across the 2nd house and the 8th house. And so what I really see is whatever you've learned about yourself, you're now building resources. It feels like you've been shocked into building resources and building safety for yourself and considering your money, considering everything that you own, considering the true value of things, and also the true value of who you are. At the same time, this is really encouraging you to develop a different kind of trust. So rather than having trust in what you're told from the experts that you've grown up knowing, this is who I listen to, i.e. local government, police, teachers, doctors, people on the news, people high up in government, etc. Because, the 3rd house is very much about school training, and we learn to take information from, your teacher and your headmaster. And, we build these ideas of where knowledge comes from and who's an authority. Right now, because of the shocks we've gone through and the extra knowledge we've learned, we're now developing a new list of people that we trust. We are developing a new way of knowing, how can I trust? What can I trust? How do I know when something is real? How do I know when something is genuine? And so we're trusting into our intuition a lot more. So to me, Aries, this is awakening your intuition a lot. Where this is ending, Mercury is going to be in Scorpio in your 8th house. This is a time when it might feel painful to be changing. It's almost like a changing of the guard of who you go to for different things. However, like I said, you are developing these new resources in yourself. And similarly, you're going to be connecting with people who are developing trust and resources in themselves. So I see you getting a lot more connected to people around you. And so you don't have to worry about where do I belong now, because, who you trust and who you allow to come into your mind and to interfere with your day, that will be where you now belong. Does that make sense? It's definitely quite a shift from where we were at the start of the year. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope that's helpful for you, Aries. Oh, and the final thing is, on this final opposition, there's going to be this lovely not a grand trine, but a series of trines from the Sun, Mars, and also Venus coming to Chiron in your 1st house. And to me, it's a healing of your identity. Chiron in your 1st house has brought up a lot of questions and a lot of pain about being you. It's brought up a lot of questions. And actually now you're feeling a lot freer than you have in a long time. So this is all working out in your favour. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Lots of love. So Taurus, if you've got Taurus ascendant, if when you look at your birth chart, you've got Taurus in your first house, this is the one for you. If you've also got Taurus and Gemini in your first house, then you also need to listen to Gemini. But anyway, if you've got a Taurus ascendant, then these oppositions, as they are showing, are influencing your first and seventh house and also your second and eighth house. Now, it's starting across your second and eighth house. So to me, it feels like money and what you've always known about money and earnings and value and maybe purpose and self-esteem. It's been shaken. It feels like there's new information that's come in from people maybe close to you or ancestrally to you, maybe family members, and what they're sharing with you maybe is shocking your sense of self. And your sense of your own ability to create resources for yourself, earn resources. So to me, this is a huge issue about resourcefulness and value when you're going to be really questioning a lot of things. As these oppositions develop and Mercury goes into the sign of Scorpio and Uranus comes back into your first house, to me, it's bringing up a question of, the people around you seem to be telling you a lot of things, and yet you've got this, it feels like you're jacked into the universe. It feels like you really know what's going on. It really feels like you have this big trust in what you know, and it's a bit shocking, and yet you can't shake this feeling. You can't not shake this feeling. It just feels like there's this very strong knowing. And so it's creating a little bit of tension because the people around you just seem to be vehemently trying to stick to their version of things, their facts. And so, it can feel very, very difficult. What I really see for you during this time, in particular around the 19th of November and into the 10th of December, this is also an invitation for you to have conversations with people. And so I do think it's going to really bring in a different kind of conversation that you're going to be inviting your partners into. And ultimately where it's going to lead with this beautiful series of, we've got the Sun, Venus and Mars in a trine to Chiron. Anywhere where there's been pain for you in the past to do with your intuition and your knowing, all of a sudden it feels like it's okay to trust your intuition now. It's safe to trust your intuition, and it's safe to go into all those secret areas of life where you felt like things were kept hidden from you. Now all of a sudden it just feels like everything is really coming to the fore and you can't escape knowledge right now. So the hidden knowledge, it's almost like you're in a secret society. Everything is just bubbling up and into your awareness, and you have a much clearer sense of what this life is about. So I hope that's helpful for you, Taurus. It's definitely a shift for you going on. Lots of love. So Gemini, if you're, let me just quickly check first of all. So this is for Gemini ascendants. If when you look at your birth chart, you've got the whole of Gemini in your first house, then this is definitely the place to be. If you have Gemini and Cancer in your first house, then listen to this one and then have a quick listen to Cancer as well. I'm keeping these quite short, so it's definitely achievable. So if you've got a Gemini ascendant, what's going on is we've got these oppositions taking place through your first and seventh house, and then your 12th and your 6th house. And so there's going to be a real sort of shift going on, because in the first house and the 7th house, this is where this first opposition is taking place. It feels very much like you're communicating with the universe. You feel very unusual, very eclectic. It feels kind of shocking for you right now. It feels like knowledge is affecting you in your body. Maybe frequency is taking its toll. Maybe you're noticing frequencies in terms of your health. Maybe you're feeling healthier when you're in the fresh air and, with your feet grounded. But you might find things like electromagnetic stress is quite strong. But you're coming into a time where it feels like you're almost becoming the knowledge, if that makes sense, almost like you as a body, it feels like you're a receiver of information. And then with Mercury over here in the 7th house, it feels like everyone else is just giving you their spouted versions of what's what and expecting you to just swallow it because that's what you're meant to do. You're meant to listen to everyone around you. And yet your knowing is really different to everyone else is knowing. And so this is where I think the shock is coming in. And in many respects, I think this opposition is about you becoming a lot more comfortable to being seen as being freaky and weird. And so this is a real invitation to yourself to love this new, fresh way of being. Now, as this develops, it feels like the people in your life are backing down into, you must follow me, you must believe this. They're really backing into the stories. The 6th house is where we really hold on to our stories and we set our life according to these stories. And yet for you, the intuition is really showing that the life that you've known is absolutely, completely dissembled. It feels like everything has fallen apart. I don't mean your whole life. I don't mean, like the way you're living your life, but the knowledge about what your life is about and what the world is about feels like it's shattered. This is real awakening kind of territory here. And so these oppositions, I think, are really showing you a very different existence. And it may well feel lonely because the people around you are holding on to the story for dear life. And you might find that you're holding on to your stories as well, because if you hold on to those stories, there's some safety there. But the moment you lose them, it's like, well, who am I now? And what the hell is life about? So I do think things are going to be shaking you to the core. But actually, there's some peace. There's some real peace in accepting the unknown and the mysterious. And in many respects, it feels nurturing. It feels like you're tapping into the secrets of the world and maybe your ancestors and going really deep into something. Now, my final thought here, Chiron is going to be in a series of trines with the Sun, Venus and Mars in the 7th house. And to me, even if the other people are backing into their stories and trying to get you to keep in with them, I actually think there's this feeling of balance. I do think that this period is about you finding your own way and still managing to stay in communion with people. Chiron has probably brought up some pain in recent times in terms of being shunned or pushed away because maybe you've not accepted somebody else's version of events. And yet at the end of this period, even if people are holding on to the stories, I think there is this sort of agreement, look, you do you and I'll do me. But apart from that, we're going to find a way to get on. So hang in there, Gemini. You're not going to lose all your friends. This is just a transformation of you trusting what you know and sticking with it. And finding out that it's actually okay. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope that's helpful for you. Lots of love. Cancer. Now, if you've got Cancer ascendant, and when you look at your birth chart, you've got Cancer in the whole of your first house, and this is absolutely the reading for you. If when you look at your first house, it's also got some Leo in, then that's your cue to also listen into the Leo reading as well. These are kept really short so that you can do that. Anyway, Cancer ascendant then. So with these oppositions going on between Mercury and Uranus, they're really stirring up a lot. First of all, the first opposition is across Gemini and Sagittarius. And to me, it just feels like there's this awakening and you go, I knew this. I already knew this. I really knew this. And there's this also, oh my God, what the hell's going on with my stories? There's this need to believe the stories you've created about your life because your whole life has been organized according to these stories. The 6th house is very much about our day-to-day, how we manage our time and space, and then the 12th house is, where we let everything go. And it's funny. To me, it feels like you're in this balance of going, I really did know this. It's weird. It's like all of a sudden you'll realize there's something that you've never known before, but it just resonates. And you're like, oh, I knew it. And so it's uncomfortable because it's bringing into question what you've believed about yourself. and about the world, which is challenging. But then as Mercury goes into the sign of Scorpio and Uranus comes back into the 11th house for the next 2 oppositions, this, I think, is bringing up a sense of difficulty to know where you want to put your energies now. You know, on the one hand, do you want to develop your passions and like develop your life according to what lights you up? Or are you going to come into the community more and create with everybody else and create a new global vision? To me, this is really calling you to take action, like creative action, and to do something that you feel really passionately about. And the big question that I think you're going to be working through is, am I going to be working with other people to create some change and to see the world in a new way? Or am I just going to kind of make myself okay and feel okay about life and find the joy in life again? And you don't even have to answer that necessarily. And maybe you'll find a way of doing something that, you know, maybe does both. Maybe you'll dedicate some time to your own interests and then some time to the interests that you share with other people. And I think, in fact, that would give you a really good view, a really balanced view and experience of the world. Now, my final thoughts about this is that, you know, you've had Chiron in your 10th house for a long time, which may have created some pain in terms of how you stand in the world and how you're seen as an authority in your own right. And yet, what's really quite cool about this, with Venus and the Sun and Mars in a trine to Chiron, all of a sudden it feels like you know the right steps to take. And so I see that you're building your authority really naturally. I don't know how it fits in with this, you know, whether you are following your passions or whether you are sort of dedicating yourself to joint passions and shared passions. But whatever you choose, to me, it feels like you're building authority and it feels really natural and easy. So my advice to you, Cancer, is go for it. You know, go for it and keep your mind as open as possible. And when you realize, I did know that, that's your cue, that's your key to the change ahead. That's your marker to know, okay, it's time now to shift. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope that's helpful for you. Lots of love. Hey there, Leo. So if you've got Leo in your first house, this is absolutely for you. If you've got Leo and Virgo in your first house, then you also want to listen to Virgo because there'll be some helpful truths in that too. Now, from this perspective, as somebody with Leo ascendant, where these oppositions are happening, I think are going to be, they're going to be challenging you initially from the perspective, because they start here across the 5th and the 11th house. To me, the tension is that right now you're taking steps to create joy and passion and work with purpose. And yet there's a lot of shock in your community. It feels like there's a lot of pressure on you to connect with people in their global views and visions. And maybe there's some shocking information about the global vision that people have signed up for or accepted. And right now you're thinking that doesn't really suit me. I'm feeling a little bit too sovereign or a little bit too philosophical to take one version of the world and run with it. You know, to me, you're looking for choice. You're looking for a lot more choice in terms of how you are passionate about life. One rule doesn't suit all, and right now it doesn't feel like it's serving you at all. And so I do think there's a real sort of conflict there at the start. Now, as these oppositions between Mercury down here and Uranus up here persist, they're going across the 4th and the 10th house, which is interesting because Uranus going back into the 10th house will feel a bit familiar. It will be a time when you really feel like doing your career on your own and making waves in terms of your career. It's not a time when you really want to follow the leader. Uranus in the 10th. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Uranus in the 10th is really encouraging you to create on the go and to be a leader in your own right, really, truly. You're not wanting to defer to anyone else's authority and you're wanting the freedom to do it yourself. And I think this really kind of matches this energy here, even though they're different signs and different elements and different qualities. You know, the 5th house is about finding your passion. You know, in this 10th house here is about, well, Uranus in your 10th house is about you finding your own flow and not following anyone else's. And yet there's also this feeling of, well, what's right for my family and what are my family wanting right now? So to me, it feels like there's a conflict of needs that's coming up with this Mercury and Uranus opposition. You know, there's this need to provide for the family and to provide for the home. And maybe some of the information that comes up over this period of time is quite shocking, and it makes you want to do life differently. And again, yeah, there's this intense burning desire to do your career, stand in the world in a way that feels free, that feels like there are no ties holding you in place. I guess that's another way of saying free. So yeah, I don't know how you're going to cope with that, but to me, it feels like it's time to lighten up already, start to release those binds already, so it's not so disruptive. And also you might think about how you speak with your family, how you get their understanding about your position, because this could be challenging. Now, my final thoughts about this, you know, Chiron has been in your 9th house for a long time, really showing the pain of being different and the pain of having a completely different view on life to most people. And right at the end of this opposition or period, you know, Chiron is going to be in a series of trines with Venus, the Sun, and Mars in your 5th house. To me, this is your signal, really strong signal to be creative and to follow your own passion. This is a signal that you are okay being yourself. You don't have to fit in with anyone else's schedule, anyone else's ideas. This is your creation. And yeah, it may well feel a bit difficult, you know, around the friends of yours that want you to do what they want you to do, and also with your family that have needs and they're sort of presupposing what you're going to do. But I really think it's okay to finally say, no, I'm the master of my own ship. I'm going to be sailing my own boat here, and you need to butt out. So it's almost like mutiny. You're going to be maybe kicking them off your boat and sailing away your own way. That doesn't mean to say that you have to separate from people or anything like that. I think the magic of this time is finding a way to make it work, that you get to be yourself and they get to understand the place that you're in. And maybe if you can understand their position but still be yourself, that's the winning formula. So I'm going to leave that there. It sounds like an impossible task, but you're a magnificent person, Leo Ascendant, so I know you've got it in you. So I'm going to leave that there. Loads of love, and take care during these oppositions. Now, this is an interesting one, Virgo Ascendant. And yeah, if when you look at your birth chart, you've got Virgo in your 1st house, that is indeed a Virgo Ascendant. If you've got Libra in your 1st house as well, you might find Libra quite helpful. But anyway, with these oppositions, here's what's going on. So these oppositions between Mercury and Uranus are immediately at the start. They are across Gemini and Sagittarius, and across your 4th and 10th houses. To me, this is a real conflict from you wanting to be absolutely free to do your own thing. This kind of burning desire to recreate your life, almost deconstruct your life as you've got it, in particular your professional life. It's almost like where you can just let go of all the different plans you've had. And of course, with Mercury in the 4th, it just feels like there's a lot of information coming from family and friends, possibly your birth family, or your family, if you have one right now, or your partner. It just feels like people have needs that they're expecting you to fall in line with. And yet there's this burning desire for you to just go your own way and to, I don't know, there's a bit of tension, because it's interesting, isn't it? Virgos are really known for being of service. And suddenly you're not wanting to be of service so much. You're really wanting to serve your own need for freedom. Now, as this opposition kicks in and Uranus goes into the sign of Taurus and Mercury goes back into the sign of Scorpio, there's other things adding to this. So first of all, it feels like whatever's going on at home and where you belong, it feels like there's a lot of chatter and a lot of rationality coming up from your hometown, from your friends and family, your neighbours, and it feels like there's a bit of a narrative developing about what a good person does and how we're meant to behave in the world and what makes sense and collective agreements and things like that. And yet, as Uranus comes back into your ninth, you're reminded of this sense of adventure, this sense of learning, this sense of spirituality. This awakening mood that you're in is actually stronger. It's so strong. And in opposition to Mercury in the third house, I think it's really hard for you to do both at the same time. Like on the one hand, there's this need for you to be able to fit in. You know, Mercury in the third house, you know, is absolutely connected to people and fitting into the narrative. And everyone will be expecting you to fit in right here. And yet your heart and your intuition and your knowing about how things are and the nature of the world and the nature of this life is just so different. It's bewildering. And so that's the thing that you may well be feeling during this time. Now, there's something else I want to share with you, and that is right at the end of this period on the 10th of December, Chiron is in a great place. Chiron that has been in your 8th house for a long time, quite possibly giving you some very deep awareness and pain as well. You know, you've been thinking a lot about where you failed expectations, where other people have been failing your expectations, and this feeling of blame, shame, guilt and anger and those energies that maybe have held you back in the past. Right now, there's the green light for them to, I don't want to say evaporate because that might be overemphasizing it, but with Venus, the Sun and Mars trining with Chiron, it feels like right now there is this great opportunity to heal the pain within the family, the pain with your birth family and your ancestry, and to be really heard and to feel free of everyone's expectations. To me, if there's some blame, shame, guilt and anger game going on between you and all your loved ones around you, to me it looks like this particular moment in time around the 10th of December and just slightly afterwards, it's the green light that things are about to resolve and heal. So there's a lot to look forward to here, Virgo, and I really do think you've got your chance to be a little bit more eclectic. And even though your ruling planet does like to rule things and to fit in, I actually think this is more about you coming to terms with the fact that maybe you're not born to fit in. Maybe you're meant to, you know, really carry your own signature too. So that's where I'm going to leave it, Virgo. Have a fabulous one and catch you next time. Bye for now. So Libra, here we are. If you've got Libra in your first house, this is absolutely the reading for you. This is for Libra Ascendant. If you've got Scorpio in there as well, you might find this also useful. But anyway, right, where should we start? So this is about the Mercury and Uranus opposition, and there's going to be 3 exact versions of it. One on the 29th of October, and then 2, one on the 19th of November and one on the 10th of December. But these 2 are across Scorpio and Taurus, and the first one is across Sagittarius and Gemini. So the first one is really landing between your 3rd and 9th house, and this is, I think, an indication of the tension between your need to fit in and feel like quite a useful member of society. I mean, the Libran energy is really associated with balance and keeping the peace and being quite diplomatic. And you are definitely able to sort of fit into communities and stuff. But with Mercury in your 3rd house, it really feels like it's important to play your part and to fulfill those social contracts in some way. It really feels important to kind of be in tune with the narrative of your peers and the narrative of your community. And yet, you know, Uranus has been blowing that aside and away. You know, Uranus in the 9th house has been really opening your eyes to a lot of new experiences, you know, like your philosophies, your spirituality, your religion, your politics. It feels like everything has been evolving and shifting. And it's taken you further and further away from, you know, the views of the people around you that you've loved and trusted in the past. And so it's a bit difficult. because, you know, there's this new Libran person developing who has more eclectic views. And so it doesn't quite sit right. Whatever is going around or going on around the 29th of October and beyond that, it feels like a real challenge, and you might have to bite your lip because it feels like the people around you are a little bit small-minded and it's hard. Now, when the Uranus goes into Taurus and Mercury goes into Scorpio, this opposition is shocking in a different way. Now it feels like your energy is transforming from being of value to the community, but now it's about how can I use my mind to create value for myself? How can I value my mind and appreciate my mind and have a great self-esteem? How can I also earn more money from my new unique standpoint? And Uranus in the 8th house, interestingly, is quite challenging. You know, Uranus he's already been here for quite a long time. In the past, you know, from 2018, you've had Uranus go all the way through this house. And I think it has brought up some shock revelations about family difficulties, expectations of you, where people maybe haven't met your expectations and where you haven't met theirs. And so I think the pain of possible separation and feeling at odds with the people that you love is a little bit painful. And so, yeah, maybe there's a new way that you're proving yourself, and you've decided that you're going to prove yourself with money, boost your self-esteem with your clever mind and your new perspective. And at the same time, try and work with other people who may well have a different sense of self-esteem. So to me, this just sounds quite an exhausting time for you, that, you know, for you who likes to keep the balance, it feels like it's really hard work. You might also find that the people in your life have got a very different way of looking at values and money and resources. And you might still have to get involved with their version of the world, even though your version is looking very different. So I think you might have to bide your time. I think it's going to be a bit of a bumpy road at some points. However, there is something that I do want to share with you that I think is going to be very, very helpful to know. And that is Chiron, which has been in your 7th house for, well, I think since 2018. And, you know, Chiron in the 7th house is, you know, it can be a bit painful. Because it reminds us just how fragile relationships are, and also how difficult it is when we feel like we don't have full support from people. You know, when we don't feel that we fit in, or that people don't approve of us, or maybe what's even worse, that people just don't love us. You know, people, you know, reject us. Rejection's a hard one. And so right at the end of this time, around the 10th of December, we've got Venus, the Sun and Mars in a lovely series of trines to Chiron, coming from your local community and coming into your personal relationships. And to me, this is just a reminder that even though you might not get the money thing right, you might not feel that people are valuing you in the way you are, and you fear that they'll never get your unique viewpoint on life. Actually, this is a time when you might find peace anyway. To me, this looks like you're starting to work at a local level. You're starting to get busy with friendships, and you're really encouraged to. There's more invitations and stuff. And it actually feels like there's this recalibration and a sense of communion, even though you are fearing the worst. So my advice to you is, I think it's safe for you to be yourself, finally, Libra. And so I really hope that's helpful to you. Lots of love to you. Have an interesting time with this very eclectic opposition. Lots of love. Hey there, Scorpio Ascendant. How you doing? So this is a little mini forecast for the Mercury and Uranus oppositions that are taking place. 3 exact ones on the 29th of October, the 19th of November and the 10th of December. Now, if you've got Scorpio in your first house, then this is definitely the right forecast for you. And what you'll see is that the first opposition is going across your 2nd and 8th houses in the sign of Sagittarius and Gemini. And then the following two oppositions between Uranus and Mercury are going across your first and seventh houses in the sign of Scorpio and Taurus. Now, what does that mean? That's the most important thing. So I'm going to start with the first one. So with Uranus in your second house Uranus in your eighth house and Mercury in your second house, the battle, I think, is about money and understanding value. Uranus in the eighth house can bring about quite a lot of shock. It can really show where other people's values are sort of imposing on you, and you get your worth from other people. Whereas Mercury down here is really encouraging you to see the complete value in yourself and to communicate it far and wide. In fact, to develop your true value so that people can pay you for it, but also to consider your self-worth, your self-esteem, and to start discussing it. And so this opposition, as it starts off, I think is quite shocking. It's going to put you into quite an internalized perspective, I think. You know, Uranus in the eighth house is in a very deep part of your chart. And you might get some sort of shocking judgments, you know, from other people around you, you know, when they're commenting on what they consider to be your value or what they consider not to be your value. So it's going to take some steeliness from you to hold your true value. Now, as Mercury comes back into Scorpio and as Uranus comes into the seventh house, you might find that the people in your life are appearing a lot less reliable and a lot less responsible than usual. You might find, you might ask yourself, why the hell am I taking them so seriously? Because, you know, like their views on how I should be, look at them. They don't know their arse from their elbow. So, you know, I think the people around you in your life are going to be quite extreme and quite chaotic and very, very changeable. So to me, this whole period of time is encouraging you to come back into your own mind, come back into your own body, and to really trust yourself much more than you have in a long time. To me, it just implies that you've been listening to what other people say and creating your value based on their judgments. And it's a reminder for you to not do that. Now, my final thought for this whole process is, from the 10th of December, we've got a series of beautiful trines taking place in your second house and your sixth house. So Chiron in your sixth house can sometimes show where your work and your day-to-day running of things, there's pain in keeping a regular diary. You know, it's hard for you to be normal, put it that way. You know, with Chiron in your sixth house, as it has been for a long time, it feels like, you know, when you're following the normal pattern of life, it's tiring. It doesn't quite suit you. It doesn't quite suit your mentality. But anyway, with Venus and the Sun and Mars in your second house, connecting to Chiron in your sixth, all of a sudden there's a burst of productivity. There's a burst of self-confidence and self-esteem. And, you know, with that burst of self-esteem and confidence is coming this whole new scheme. There's this whole new diary opening up for you, this whole new way of organizing your life. So I think as you come back into yourself, your confidence rises, and then all of a sudden your life gets back on track. So it's a pretty good message, actually. So I hope that's helpful for you, Scorpio. Much, much love to you. Have a good one, and catch you next time. Bye for now. So Sagittarius, if your ascendant fills this first house, then this is indeed the forecast for you. If you've got a bit of Capricorn in there, you might also choose to listen into Capricorn. But anyway, this is for Sagittarius ascendant, and we're talking about the Mercury opposition to Uranus, which is happening exactly 3 times. It starts off across your first and seventh house, in the signs of Sagittarius and Gemini, and then it ends in your 6th and 12th houses in the sign of Scorpio and Taurus. And so I want to talk about this changing energy that's going on that could be a bit shocking, you know, because you've got Uranus in the 7th house is really, I think, talking very much about how changeable the people in your life are right now, and how it's very difficult for you to plan your life, given that your partner in crime just seems a little bit irresponsible, a little bit, yeah, they're not their usual self, you know, and it's very difficult to plan things around the people right now, because it just feels like everyone is a little bit unknown. And, you know, with Mercury in your first house, you might find that you really are knowing yourself right now. And you're really wanting to communicate who you are. So it almost feels like a battle of like, this is who I am, and you're over here. It feels like there's this sort of conflict between you, and it feels like you're the rational and sensible one, and they're all, you know, they've got their head in their clouds and they're changeable as well. So it feels a bit dynamic, a little bit challenging. And of course, the presupposition here is that you're different. Like, I'm here, you're there. And I guess my comment to you is, how can you find yourself? Like, how can you find that middle ground? You know, and is it even possible right now? I mean, Uranus has been in this part of your chart for a little while now. And so it's not just an isolated instance. You know, this has been going on for a while, since the 7th of July. So yeah, I don't know what you've observed about your partners. But anyway, the next step, you know, Uranus is going to go back into Taurus. And then Mercury is going to go back into your 12th house. And at that particular moment in time, it feels like it's not just your partner and the people around you that you don't know, but it feels like your schedule is completely over the top. It just feels like your schedule is unknown. There's lots of life changes going on. It feels like there's sudden appointments that you need to make, sudden bills. Maybe you suddenly feel up to it, and then suddenly you feel, oh, my energy's just gone. So to me, it just feels like things are going into a bit of a chaotic period. Now, this, like, Uranus was going through this house since 2018, so this might ring a bell. You know, it's not a completely foreign feeling for you. You know, if you've noticed in the last 7 years or so that things have been a little bit crazy in your life and things have been a bit unpredictable, then this you may well just be reminded a little bit of how it's been. But one of the things about this is, in the unpredictability, it's creating more stories for you to live your life by. You know, like that, you know, this period of time is a fun time, and that you're an unpredictable person, and that your life can't be planned. And so this is creating and encouraging you back into stories of your own carefree ways, and also how difficult it is to plan. So from that perspective, you could give your partner a bone if they're seeming a little bit different right now. It might just be that they have fallen into alignment with how you've been over the last 7 years. It feels like your chaotic life has created somebody who is, a lot less reliable and responsible now. It's almost like a reaction, especially if you share your life together. They've kind of caught on and they're going with the flow of it. And so what's really happening around the 19th of November and the 10th of December, as Mercury is making this exact opposition with Uranus here, you're reminded to go deep within yourself and create a new story for you. This is really asking you to let go of the story of calamity, let go of the story of the ups and downs, let go of the story of the deep changes, the need to change, let go of the story of fluctuating energy patterns, let go of the story of sudden bills. To me, this is about you rewriting a new story for yourself. And I'm not going to say it's easy, because, you know, with these oppositions, they're quite challenging. You might be reminded of times in the past where in actual fact there has been chaos. But my question to you is, like, where in the chaos has there still been this still, silent witness, this person that was right in the center of the storm and was still able to get it right? Where is that person? And that's the person you're really tuning into right now. From the 10th, Mercury will start moving forwards again, and very soon we'll be back into the first house, where you can start celebrating who you are and start getting busy again. But before I kind of draw this to a close, I just want to share a couple of other things. So you've had Chiron in your 5th house for quite a while, and that has created possibly a little bit of pain around your creations. Now, that could be your children. Maybe there's been difficulties with children. Or maybe there's a sort of painful acknowledgement that you're not good enough to, you know, like create something of value. Or maybe you've got these creative ideas and you can never seem to get it right. To me, this is a question of really drinking in your passion and getting very excited. I mean, you might also think the same about love, you know, that you get ready for a loving relationship and then at the last minute it just kind of falls apart. You know, Chiron here can be quite punishing. He's not going to be here forever, by the way. Next year he's going to go into Taurus. But around the 10th of December, we've got this lovely series of trines from Venus, the Sun and Mars to Chiron in your 5th house. And of course, with Venus, the Sun and Mars in your 1st house, this is going to be a time when you're really coming back into your sense of passion for being yourself. And with that, I think this is cured. To me, it feels like if your romance is off, there's going to be a feeling that actually, no, it's coming back. If your creativity is off, you've not managed to make it work, suddenly it's coming back into place. And maybe as this heals, you'll find that your life doesn't have to be so crazy anymore. So I'm going to leave that there, Sagittarius. Hope that was helpful to you. Loads and loads of love and catch you next time. Bye for now. Capricorn. Now, if you've got Capricorn in your 1st house in this section here, when you look at your chart, then this is absolutely the forecast for you. This is Capricorn Ascendant. And what I'm looking at here is the Mercury and Uranus oppositions. There's 3 exact oppositions taking place between the 29th of October and the 10th of December. Now, what I really love about this is this is going from your 6th to your 12th house. This is where it's starting from. And this is where it's ending. It's ending across your 5th and 11th house polarity. So let's break this down and try and understand this a little bit. So first of all, Uranus has been in your 6th house since the 7th of July this year. And since that time, he has most likely brought in a sense of change, a sense of rapid change, a need to change, maybe change the way you're living, how you're earning your money, how you organize your day-to-day routine. It's quite possibly affected your health as well. It's kind of thing, it feels like everything's up in the air and it's hard to catch your breath. And at the time of this opposition with Mercury in your 12th, you might feel very, very sort of tense around this kind of new story of change and the calamity of change and the chaos of change and how surprising and shocking and possibly destabilizing this change is. And, you know, Mercury in your 12th is really reminding you that there is this silent witness, that there is this part of you that can see things from a very, very different perspective, that can be calm, that can be meditative, that can work things out. That when you are peaceful, you're able to see a different perspective. And so I think, you know, around the 29th, that tension of feeling the chaos, knowing the chaos, and yet on the other side, you also know the calm. And you know that some of these stories, whilst they seem very real in real life, they're also a bit of an illusion, you know, that maybe you needed some of this to make your life flow into the next part, into the next chapter. And so after this moment, you've got Mercury going back into Scorpio in the 11th house, and then Uranus going back into the 5th house in the sign of Taurus. And to me, what is going on at this point is Uranus is reigniting your sense of fun and passion. And it's bringing up this new sense of there are possibilities for romance. There are new possibilities with your children. There are new possibilities with the things that you're creative with. In fact, it feels like actually there's a playground ahead of you that, you know, the idea that life has to be painful and chaotic is not necessarily the truth. And then as Mercury's coming back into the 11th, there's a little bit of tension because it feels like there's a lot of, you know, maybe there are people from your friendships and networks that are trying to bring you out of your period of self creation and passion and trying to bring you into this sort of friendship realm, trying to bring you into like under their wing a little bit. And you might feel the tension of that. And of course, it's entirely up to you how you choose to do it. Maybe you'll find a way to redesign your life and make it fun and funky and fresh, and really hit into all of those really sort of passionate things that you really want to look at. And maybe you'll find a way to allocate time with friends, and to give them a little bit of a space so you don't lose them completely. But to me, the tension is between what you want to do now you're finally free versus what all these other well-meaning people around you want to do. As tension goes, I have to say this is one of the more manageable tensions. So as I'm looking at this particular Mercury and Uranus opposition that's taking place, I actually think you'll deal with it with a lot more ease than other signs. My final comment on this is you've had Chiron in your fourth house for quite a while, since 2018. And Chiron here can really show where there's pain at home, and where, the pain of not getting it right at home, the pain of, why does home feel like so loveless? What we've got around the 10th of December is this lovely series of trines, the Sun, Venus, and also Mars, in a trine to Chiron. To me, there is a sense of resourcefulness and inner peace, that you can actually find a new home, and you can find this healed home, and you can heal yourself at home. So I think things are going to start to work out in your favor. And actually, as we're into mid-December, you're going to realize that the changes you've made are giving you a lot more freedom than you've had in a long time. So I'm going to leave that there. Loads of love to you, Capricorn, and catch you next time. Bye for now. Hey there, Aquarius Ascendant. So this is the forecast, basically talking about Mercury and Uranus in an opposition taking place. The first one's on the 29th of October, then there's another exact opposition on the 19th of November, and then finally another exact opposition on the 10th of December. Now, you'll see the first one is across Gemini and Sagittarius, with Uranus in Gemini and Mercury in Sagittarius. And then the following two are across Scorpio and Taurus. And so what I want to do is just talk you through how this may occur, because this energy is full of uprising, full of shocks and surprises. It's when we are lightning fast in the way we're processing. And of course, from your perspective, Aquarius, Uranus is one of your rulers. So this is a pretty big deal for you. So this very first one that's getting this three-part opposition underway. Uranus, your ruling planet, is in the sign of Gemini. And, I imagine that since it's been in Gemini, since the 7th of July, that you've got quite excited about what you're passionate about. To me, it feels like life is almost like a playground. It's a place to really experience things from a new perspective. Obviously, you've got Pluto in your first house as well, which is absolutely creating a sense of wanting freedom in how you're experiencing your life. And so to me, this is a real invitation for you to be practicing and playing and joyfully throwing yourself into anything and everything. Now, this part of your chart is also about children. When I had Uranus on my fifth house cusp, that was the year I got pregnant for the first time and became a mum. And, as Uranus went through my whole fifth house, that spanned, my time of having children. So it can also definitely bring about a family, and also a new love. So it's full of possibilities, but it's about what you're creating. If it's, new life, a new relationship, but it could be a new business. It could be a new hobby. It's something that's bringing life to you and raising you up. And then, Mercury up here in the 11th house, I think, is looking for a bit of social contagion. It's looking to, create with other people and to have a kind of social vision. This is highly, highly sociable. And so you may well feel that there's pressure coming from friends of friends and networks, to be doing stuff with them and not to be following your own dreams. And yet, right now it feels very heady and exciting to follow your dreams. And so to me, this first opposition, it's bringing great insight into the drama of whose joy are you going to attend to? Are you going to put your joy first, or are you going to focus more on the overall joy, the joy for everybody? it's a bit of a dilemma. I mean, as dilemmas go, it's not the worst one. It's not the worst challenge to face. But you'll find that as Uranus comes back into Taurus, and you've experienced Uranus in Taurus since 2018, so it's quite a long time. You've got a sense of it. And also as Mercury comes back into the 10th house, the 4th and the 10th are really, really important parts of the chart. The 4th is really speaking about family, and so Uranus here I think is really showing where there's a sense of freshness and change, also a freshness leading to a necessary change in terms of your home. It's almost like to be able to ascend, expand, wake up, evolve. Your home needs to change, and Uranus coming into the 4th house can be very, very disruptive. It can really show a shift whereby your family relationships are affected. You might find that somebody at home is really wanting a change, and it rubs off on you. But I get the feeling that with Uranus in your Pluto in your 1st house, and also Uranus down here in your 4th, it's your changes that are also affecting what's going on at home. And so, things could get a little bit tense as you're going back into this slightly more disruptive phase in life. And then Mercury at the top of the chart is really encouraging you to, I think, inform your career. To me, I think, Mercury in the 10th house has more to do with Uranus in Gemini than it does to do with Uranus in Taurus. To me, Uranus in Gemini and Mercury in the 10th are really showing where your passion and purpose can really reach more people. And similarly, Uranus in the 4th, I think, sort of feels a little bit more like Mercury in the 11th, because they're social, is where your family might be affected, and this is where your friends might be affected. And so I actually think as we're going back, your attention is really going to be focused more on your career, and on how you can fully express your career, against this feeling that not everybody is completely settled with your choices. Similarly, with Uranus in Gemini, it feels like there are friends and friends of friends, and a bit of pressure to take your focus from being on you and your joy and allowing your energies to go into some kind of group project. So what I'm getting here, and again, this really relates to Pluto being in the 1st house, is how you need to be the master of your own journey. And the more pressure you're getting from family and friends, the harder it is, obviously, but the more you're sticking to your guns. And so I actually think this is an invitation to follow your path a lot more passionately, a lot more rigidly. To me, this is a confirmation. Anywhere where it's difficult right now, you're taking that as a confirmation. People wouldn't try so hard if I wasn't onto something. My final thoughts about this period of time and where it's leading. We've got this lovely series of trines coming from the 11th house and connecting to Chiron in your 3rd. And this might explain it a little bit. Chiron in the 3rd is really showing where you might be afraid of being bullied, or where you've got a bullying story, where you've been an outcast, where you've not been included. And, as the Sun, Venus and Mars make a trine to Chiron, I think there's this sense that, even if you do follow your own path, you're not going to get excluded. You've got enough skills, you've got enough friends, people do like you. And so what if you're going through a weird transformation at the moment? So what if you're really quite intense with Pluto in your 1st house? I think as we're hitting the 10th of December, after all these little skirmishes, I think your big awakening is that you are actually okay. You're an okay person, and you're not going to be on your own. So that's where I'm going to leave this, Aquarius. I hope it's helpful for you in understanding this and unpacking it further. Sending you loads and loads of love, and catch up with you real soon. So Pisces, let's have a look at Mercury and Uranus in an opposition. They're making 3 exact oppositions. The first is on the 29th of October, the 19th of November is the next one, and then 10th of December. Now you'll see that the following 2, the subsequent 2, are going across Scorpio and Taurus, and the first one on the 29th of October is across Gemini and Sagittarius. And so this is where we're going to start. So currently you've got Uranus in Gemini in your 4th house, which I think is really bringing about this almost revolution in terms of how you are seeing your family. You know, it's really showing the need to move, the need to shuffle, the need to break things down. Anything that has got too sturdy, too strong, too powerful, and is not giving you enough freedom at home. I mean, you're really looking for a sense that you can go where you need to go. And maybe when it feels too forced, there's this almost stronger impulse coming up within you going, I got to get out of here. It feels too heavy. It feels too much. And so I think that Uranus energy is super strong. And then, you know, with Mercury up here in your 10th house, there's also this energy of, I think, you know, what you're saying is actually being listened to. It's like you could move up in your career quite easily, and now could be a really good time to talk about the amazing shifts that you're going through. But as these are showing up in an opposition, I think, yes, you're wanting to break free of the home, and yes, you're wanting to shake things up at home. And yet at the same time, there's this opportunity for you to work longer, harder, quicker, faster, and more socially in terms of your career. And I think you're feeling very torn between home and away, personal and public, private and again public, you know, not private, open, transparent. And so it's quite a pull, and these oppositions across the 4th and the 10th really do mean a lot. Anyway, throughout this time, Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio in the 9th, and to me, that's opening you up again, reopening you to a much larger context and a much bigger picture. Again, I think it's actually opening you up to a greater sense of freedom, which is really kind of fitting in with this Uranus in the 4th house pattern of not wanting to be tied down. And funnily enough, as Uranus comes back into the 3rd house, that energy is really mirrored, because Uranus in the 3rd house really wants to do his own thing. Wants to feel very, very free, to follow his own pattern, to not follow the routines. And of course, the 3rd house is actually a place where there's lots of routines, and, you know, quite a consistent narrative that most of the people around you follow. It's a very known place, and yet Mercury in the 9th is very unknown. And so it's interesting. I'm getting more similarity between the Uranus in the 3rd and how you want to kind of break free from what is known. And I'm also really seeing that there's this urge to be in the unknown, this urge to be on the adventure. And so to me, this is a time when you're realizing that anywhere where you're stuck with a career, stuck with expectations on behavior, that right now you're almost ready to kind of chuck it all away and say, enough of that. I'm off to do X, Y, Z. And it could be something completely new, completely unexpected, and is likely to shock a few people. And so be it. If that's what needs to happen, I think, you know, it's okay to shock people right now, because it feels like you're alive. And I don't think you can put a price on that. You know, that feeling of freedom, I think, is really important. Now, the other thing that's going on right at the end of this opposition period is we've got these beautiful planets. We've got Venus, the Sun, and Mars, and they're all making a lovely trine to Chiron. Now, Chiron's been in your in your 2nd house for ages, since 2018. And yeah, he's taken up a lot of space there. And no doubt you've had a feeling that your confidence has dropped in terms of your work and why people might pay you and your self-worth and stuff. I mean, Chiron's always going to be somewhere in your chart. And, you know, right now, this is the time of Chiron in your 2nd house. He's teaching you how to value and respect yourself. He's teaching you that you have a purpose. And he's also teaching you that you're important, you're enough, and that actually people do want you around. And so as we're at the end of this, this retrograde period, we've got the sun in the 10th, which is, you know, where you're getting appreciation for who you are. Venus in the 10th, where you're really seen and people like to see you. And then Mars in the 10th, where you're given an opportunity to move forwards with your aims. And all three of those trining Chiron, I think this is a time when you're really almost curing. I don't want to say curing exactly, because, you know, I think we can always undo our really good work that we do. But to me, you're stepping forwards and stepping beyond that shadow of doubting yourself and stepping beyond that shadow of, you know, I don't think I can do it. I think I'm just going to sit this one out. To me, this is daring you and urging you to move forwards and to really follow what it is that you want to do. That is going to turn your world upside down a bit. It is going to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit unstable, but it's moving you forwards. And so I think this is the beauty of this period ahead. It is unscripted. However, it's taking you into a greater sense of self-worth. And yeah, you can't put a price on that. So that's where I'm going to leave this, Pisces. Loads and loads of love to you. Have a fabulous opposition, and good luck, and catch up with you next time. Lots of love. So they were my thoughts about Mercury and Uranus. And if you found that helpful, yay. I really hope it has made a difference. I really do think that we're on the verge of a big shift. I think we're on a big shift in terms of humanity, but I think definitely as people, and like I said right at the start, if you've got Mercury or Uranus in any kind of aspect, this is really going to pick up on the flavours of the Mercury and Uranus opposition. So I'm going to leave that there. Loads and loads of love to you. If you enjoy my work, please do feel free to subscribe and also share and comment and you know, let me know your thoughts. And, you know, if you can't get enough of me, then why not consider membership? You know, you get so much more of me there. And yeah, I'd be very happy to welcome you aboard. But anyway, loads and loads of love to you. Have a good one and catch up with you next time. Bye for now.